In the last lecture, I walked you through the project we'll use and through Axios, the package I recommend for making HTTP requests in React applications. Let's now make such an HTTP request. And for that dummy backend we're using, I already showed you the URL you need to send that request to get an array of posts. Now, I want to render that array of posts in my blog container. There I have the individual post components, and of course that should be a dynamically generated list of posts, a list of posts we fetched from a server to be precise. Now, where do we make this HTTP request then? Let's have a look at the lifecycle hook slides again for that. Maybe we find a fitting lifecycle hook there. If we have a look at the lifecycle hooks we encountered during component creation, there is one lifecycle hook we should use for side effects, component did mount. And the HTTP request is a side effect. It doesn't affect your React logic or something like that, but it has the side effect of fetching new data. And if your React application is dynamically outputting some data, which it probably is, the data changing, of course, is a side effect affecting your application. So component did mount is a great place for causing side effects, but not for updating state since it triggers a re-render. We will still update the state here once the HTTP request is done and got us new data, because we actually want to re-update the page. So here this is actually a wanted behavior. So component did mount is the best place to send a HTTP request. So in the blog container, let's implement component did mount. And now we need Axios to send that request. So I will import Axios from the Axios package. And now we can use it here in component did mount. Axios offers a get method for sending, you guessed it, get requests. This method needs at least one argument, the URL we want to send this get request to. So here that's the URL I copied from the dummy placeholder page with /posts at the end. Now you can also pass a second argument to configure this request, and you can learn more about all the configuration options and so on that GitHub page. This course is of course not mainly about Axios, so I won't walk you through all the setup you can possibly add here, but this page is a great starting point. Still, we're about to see some of the things you can do with Axios throughout this module. Here, however, I don't need any specific configuration. I just want to send a vanilla normal GET request to that URL. The thing, of course, is this should return us some posts, but trying to store them in a post constant won't work. Because, of course, that GET request happens asynchronously. It doesn't finish immediately. It needs some time to go to the server and get the data. JavaScript, though, executes your code in a synchronous manner. So after this line, the next line is executed immediately. It won't pause until this is finished. So it won't store the posts in the posts constant here. This is the wanted behavior because we don't want to block the execution of our application just because we're waiting for this request to finish. Axios therefore uses promises, a default JavaScript object introduced with ES6, and thanks to our workflow we're using with Create React App, also available in older browsers since the code gets compiled to code which also works in older browsers. So Axios uses promises, and get returns a promise. So we can chain then on it. Then is simply a method which takes a function as the input, and this function will get executed once the promise resolves. So once the data from the backend is there, we can say. The function then receives a response object as an input. This will be passed into the function automatically by Axios. And let's for now simply print that to the console so that we can see what's inside of it. I'll save this code, go back to the React application and reload the page. And we immediately see this object being printed to the console. If we expand it, we see the status code here, and all these properties here are just properties provided by the Axios package. So we got the status code 200, so it was successful. We see the request which was sent. We see the response headers, and important for us, we have the data object which contains the data returned from the server we sent the request to. And for this dummy placeholder service, this simply is an array of JavaScript objects where each object should represent a post. As you can see, there we got a title, a body, an ID, and a user ID property. Now we can work with that data, and of course I want to work with it to render it dynamically to the screen here and output some posts instead of that dummy content I have right now.